You stumble through life, half asleep, don't you? Eyes open, body moving, but mind absent. Drifting like a ghost through corridors you've walked 1,000 times before. You call it routine. I call it surrender. Every morning, you reach for that glowing rectangle beside your bed before your feet touch the ground, before you've taken a conscious breath, before you've even asked yourself who you are today or what you're fighting for. The world floods in notifications, demands other people's urgencies, and you, foolish as you are, mistake this invasion for connection, for living. Let me be brutally clear. You are not living. You are reacting. Like a potion ingredient thrown carelessly into a cauldron, bubbling and dissolving according to forces you never bothered to master. I spent decades in the shadows, perfecting the most misunderstood art known to wizard kind, potions. Do you know why most fail at it? Because they lack patience, discipline, the understanding that transformation, real transformation, requires precise conditions at precise moments. One ingredient added to early ruins everything. One step skipped, and the entire brew turns to poison. Your morning is that critical first ingredient, and you've been adding it wrong your entire life. What I'm about to share with you isn't comfortable wisdom wrapped in golden platitudes. This isn't your house elf bringing you breakfast on a silver platter. This is the truth that separates those who merely exist from those who command their existence. The difference between a life of quiet desperation and a life of deliberate power. So before you dismiss this as another self-improvement sermon, ask yourself, how much longer are you willing to be a passenger in your own life? How many more years will you give away before you realize you're the only one who can reclaim them? The clock is ticking. The cauldron is before you. And the most important ingredient must be added now, at dawn, when the world still holds its breath. Are you finally ready to stop sleeping through your own story? You think you're tired because you didn't sleep enough. How delightfully simple, how wonderfully naive. Let me disabuse you of that comforting lie. You're not tired from lack of sleep. You're exhausted from lack of purpose, from starting each day as if it were happening to you rather than for you, from waking without intention, without sovereignty, without the slightest acknowledgement that you are a being of will and choice. I've seen it in faces for years. Students stumbling into my classroom, eyes glazed, minds elsewhere, not because they lacked intelligence, oh no, but because they'd already surrendered their morning to chaos, to impulse, to the tyranny of the trivial. You see, there's a particular magic that exists only at dawn. The Muggles don't understand it because they can't see it, but you've felt it, haven't you? Those rare mornings when you woke before the alarm, when silence wrapped around you like a cloak, when possibility felt tangible. For a moment, you were the author of your day rather than its victim. Then you reached for your phone, and the spell shattered. Every scroll, every notification, every mindless consumption of someone else's curated reality. It's a small death, a tiny surrender of your sovereign mind. You think it's harmless, just a few minutes, just checking. But those minutes, they're not neutral, they're corrosive. They're the slow poison that convinces you life is something that happens in a feed rather than in the flesh and blood present. Here's what actually occurs in those first moments. Your brain, still hovering between the subconscious and conscious realms, is extraordinarily stable. Neurologically, you're in a state similar to hypnosis. What you expose yourself to doesn't just inform your day. It infects it, programs it, determines whether you'll move through the hours as a master or a servant. And you're choosing servitude every single morning. But let me tell you something about servitude. It's comfortable, safe. It requires nothing of you except obedience. Mastery, on the other hand, mastery demands sacrifice. It demands you face the most terrifying question of all. What if you actually took control? What if you stopped blaming circumstances, stopped waiting for permission, stopped hoping someone else would hand you the life you want? What if you became dangerous? Now we arrive at the part where you expect me to hand you some cheerful morning checklist. Wake at 5, meditate, journal your gratitude, drink your lemon water and pretend the universe cares about your intentions. Spare me. What I'm about to give you isn't a routine, it's a ritual. And there's a distinction so vast between those two words that most will never grasp it. A routine is something you do. A ritual is something that transforms you. One is mechanical, the other is alchemical. The first 30 minutes after you wake, this is your crucible, your sacred laboratory. The time when you don't just prepare for the day, you forge who you'll be within it. Listen carefully, because I'll only say this once. You must guard this time as if your life depends on it, because it does. Not your biological life, perhaps, but the life that matters, the one where you're fully awake, fully present, fully yours. Step 1 is absurdly simple, and yet you'll fight it with everything you have. Do not touch your phone. Do not check your messages. Do not let the outside world in until you've first claimed the inside world. Your mind is a fortress, and you've been leaving the gates wide open before you've even posted the guards. Instead, you rise in silence. And in that silence, you do something most people haven't done in years. You remember who you are beneath all the noise, beneath all the roles and responsibilities and expectations. You sit with the uncomfortable truth that you are both incredibly powerful and utterly responsible for what comes next. This is where the weak turn away. They can't bear the weight of their own potential. But you're still here, aren't you? Still listening. That means something. The second movement of this ritual is brutally honest self-inventory. Not the sanitized, Instagram-worthy version where you list what you're grateful for like you're trying to appease some cosmic judge. No, you ask the questions that cut. What did I avoid yesterday? What am I afraid of today? Where am I lying to myself? Where am I playing small because playing big requires courage? I'm not sure I possess. You write these answers down, pen to paper, not typed into some app that will notify you about everything except your own truth. The physical act of writing bypasses the clever, defensive mind and accesses something deeper, something more honest. Then, and this is where most self-help gurus would have you stop, You don't just acknowledge these truths. You make a vow, a single specific commitment for the day ahead. Not 10 goals, not a manifesto. One clear action that frightens you slightly. One move toward the person you claim you want to become. Because here's the secret. They don't tell you. Transformation isn't grand. It's not the massive leap. It's the daily decision to do one thing that yesterday's version of you wouldn't have done. There's a reason the greatest minds throughout history sought solitude, why the most powerful wizards worked alone in towers, why philosophers wandered in silence, why artists locked themselves away from the world's incessant chatter. It wasn't antisocial. It was survival. Your morning solitude isn't about escaping people. It's about escaping the version of yourself that only exists in response to them. The performer, the pleaser, the one who's spent so long being what others need that you've forgotten what you actually are. In those quiet morning moments, stripped of audience and expectation, something extraordinary happens. Your true thoughts emerge. Not the ones you've been taught to think. Not the ones that make you acceptable or likable or safe. The dangerous ones. The honest ones. The thoughts that could actually change everything if you had the courage to follow them. But you must earn this clarity. It doesn't arrive because you sat down and waited for it. It comes when you actively engage with the silence, when you move your body with intention, when you breathe like you mean it. Physical movement in the morning isn't about fitness, though your body will thank you for it. It's about remembering you have a body at all. You're not just a brain floating in obligation. You're flesh and blood and nerve endings. And when you move with purpose, you're sending a signal to every cell. We are awake. We are alive. We are not merely surviving today. 20 minutes. That's all. Not a marathon. Not some punishing exercise regime you'll abandon by next week. Just 20 minutes of movement that makes you feel powerful. Makes you feel present. Makes you remember that you occupy space in this world and that space is yours to command. And here's the part that will sound like madness until you experience it. When you move your body first thing in the morning, you're not just exercising, you're practicing sovereignty. You're proving to yourself that you can make your flesh obey your will. That you're not a slave to comfort or convenience or the path of least resistance. If you can't command your own body, how exactly do you expect to command your day, your career, your life? After movement comes stillness. Not the collapsed stillness of exhaustion, but the charged stillness of focus. 5 minutes, eyes closed. Not to empty your mind, that's impossible, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something, but to direct it. You visualize the person you're becoming, not in some vague, wishful way. Specifically, you see yourself taking that difficult action you committed to. You feel the discomfort of growth. You rehearse courage until it becomes familiar. The mind cannot distinguish between vividly imagined experience and actual experience. This is neuroscience, not mysticism. You're literally rewiring your brain, creating pathways for behaviors that don't yet exist but soon will. This is the alchemy. This is how you transmute the base metal of who you were into the gold of who you're becoming. You know what separates those who transform their lives from those who merely dream about it. It's not talent. It's not circumstances. It's not luck or privilege or any other convenient excuse you've been clutching like a security blanket. It's the refusal to negotiate with tomorrow. Tomorrow is a liar. Tomorrow is the sweetest poison ever distilled. It whispers that you have time, that you can start later, that today isn't really that important in the grand scheme of things. And you believe it. You always believe it. I'll start my morning routine tomorrow. I'll take that risk tomorrow. I'll have that difficult conversation tomorrow. I'll become who I'm meant to be tomorrow. Meanwhile, tomorrow never arrives. It can't, because when it does arrive, it's called today, and you're still making the same bargain with the next tomorrow on the horizon. This is why your morning ritual must include one non-negotiable element, the thing you least want to do, the conversation you're avoiding, the project you're terrified to start, the truth you're afraid to speak. Whatever makes your stomach tighten when you think about it, that's your morning's work. Not eventually, not when you're ready, not when conditions are perfect. Now, today, this morning, before your courage evaporates, before you talk yourself out of it, before you convince yourself it can wait just one more day. Do you know why I ask you to do this in the morning specifically? Because by afternoon, you'll have accumulated 1,000 reasons why not. You'll be tired. You'll be busy. Something will have gone wrong, and you'll use it as justification for retreat. The day will have filled up with other people's priorities, and yours will sink to the bottom like a stone. But in the morning is yours. The world hasn't yet made its demands. Your energy is full. Your excuses haven't yet assembled themselves into an impenetrable wall. This is your moment of maximum power, and you've been wasting it on scrolling through other people's manufactured lives. Here's the brutal arithmetic of postponement. Every day you delay is a day you'll never get back. Not in some abstract philosophical sense. Actually, never. That specific morning, with its unique potential, is gone forever. And you traded it for what? Comfort, avoidance, the illusion of safety. The graveyard is full of people who were going to start tomorrow, who had brilliant ideas they never executed, who felt the pull toward greatness but chose comfort instead, who died with their song still inside them because they kept waiting for the perfect moment to sing. There is no perfect moment. There's only this one, this morning, this choice, and the most insidious part. Each postponement makes the next one easier. You're training yourself in the art of surrender, becoming fluent in the language of later, until eventually you forget you ever had the capacity to act at all. You think identity is something you discover. How touchingly romantic, how completely wrong. Identity isn't found, it's forged. Every single morning, with every single choice. You're either building the person you claim you want to be, or demolishing them brick by brick. Most people never grasp this. They wait for some revelation, some defining moment that will finally tell them who they are. Meanwhile, they're constructing themselves unconsciously, haphazardly, like a house built without blueprints. Then they wonder why everything feels unstable. Your morning is your blueprint session. It's when you consciously decide, who am I building today? Not who you were yesterday. Not who your parents expected you to be. Not who your failures convinced you that you are. Who are you choosing to become in the next 24 hours? This is where language becomes critical. The stories you tell yourself in those first waking moments, they're not just thoughts. They're spells, incantations that bind or liberate. And most of you are cursing yourselves before you've even left the bed. I'm not a morning person. I'm too old to change. I've always been anxious. I'm just not disciplined. Every time you speak these words, you're not describing reality. You're creating it. You're casting a spell of limitation. And then you're shocked when you remain limited. What if, instead, you spoke a different spell? Not delusional affirmations that ignore reality, but powerful declarations of intent. I am someone who keeps promises to myself. I am becoming disciplined. I face what I fear. Not because it's true yet, but because you're making it true through the alchemy of consistent action. The person who exercises every morning isn't someone who was born loving exercise. There's someone who decided they were the kind of person who exercises, and then proved it to themselves daily, until the identity solidified into truth. The person who creates instead of consumes isn't naturally creative. They decided they were a creator, and then they created until the decision became destiny. This is the secret that changes everything. You don't need to feel like doing something to do it. You don't need to be ready. You don't need permission or certainty or confidence. You simply need to decide who you're building, and then lay one brick, then another, then another. Your morning is the foundation. Everything else rises from it or crumbles without it. And here's what nobody tells you about building a new identity. The old one will fight back viciously. It will offer you every excuse, every rationalization, every seductive reason to stop this foolishness and return to comfortable mediocrity. That resistance, that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's proof you're doing it right. The old self doesn't surrender easily. Why would it? It's kept you safe, kept you small, kept you from the terrifying possibility of actually becoming who you could be. But safety is not the same as living, and comfort is just another word for stagnation. Let me tell you about a particular kind of death. The kind that happens slowly, imperceptibly, while you're busy being busy, while you're drowning in notifications and obligations and the perpetual hum of urgency that isn't actually urgent at all. You're being bled dry, and you don't even notice the wound. Every morning you surrender to distraction. You're not just losing time, you're losing capacity. The ability to think deeply, to focus intensely, to sit with discomfort long enough to transmute it into something meaningful. Your attention is the most valuable resource you possess. More valuable than money, more valuable than time, because it's the lens through which you experience everything, and you're giving it away for free to anyone who wants it. To every app designed by teams of psychologists whose sole purpose is to hijack your neurology. to every piece of outrage bait engineered to keep you scrolling, seething, scattered, and it's working brilliantly. You can't focus anymore, can you? Can't read for more than a few minutes without reaching for your phone. Can't sit with a single thought without jumping to the next stimulus. Your mind has become a cheap tavern where any drunk thought can stumble in and demand attention. This didn't happen by accident. This is conditioning. Pavlovian training so effective that you've become a puppet who doesn't even see the strings. But here's the devastating part. The cost isn't just productivity. It's not just that you accomplish less. The real cost is who you're failing to become. Greatness, real greatness, not the social media version, requires sustained attention, deep work, the ability to sit with a problem for hours, to pursue a thought to its conclusion, to create something that didn't exist before. This requires a mind that can focus, that can resist the siren song of easy dopamine, that can endure boredom long enough to break through to the other side where actual insight lives. You think the masters of any craft, art, science, magic, achieved mastery by checking their notifications every 3 minutes, by fragmenting their attention into 1,000 meaningless pieces. They didn't, and neither will you. Your morning sets the pattern. If you begin the day scattered, you'll remain scattered. If you begin the day as a consumer of other people's content, you'll spend the day consuming instead of creating. If you begin the day reactively, you'll end it wondering where the hours went and why nothing meaningful got done. But if you begin with focus, with one clear priority that you pursue before anything else, you're training your mind in the art of attention. You're proving to yourself that you're capable of sustained effort. You're building the cognitive muscle that separates the extraordinary from the mediocre. 20 minutes of focused work in the morning is worth more than 3 hours of distracted effort in the afternoon. Because it's not just about what you produce. It's about who you're becoming in the process. Someone who controls their attention controls their life. Someone who surrenders their attention surrenders everything. Which one are you choosing to be? There's a particular kind of magic that only works when no one is watching. When there's no applause, no recognition, no one to bear witness to your effort. This is where character is actually forged, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of your own morning solitude. You see, most people are performers. They'll do what's right when others can see. They'll work hard when the boss is present. They'll be disciplined when someone's keeping score, but alone, in the privacy of their own morning, they collapse into their basest instincts. The snooze button, the phone, the path of least resistance. And they wonder why life feels empty, why success feels hollow even when they achieve it. Because they know the truth. They know they're only the person they pretend to be when someone's watching. The rest of the time, there's someone else entirely. This is the split that destroys people from the inside out. The distance between who they are publicly and who they are privately. And every morning they widen that gap, that chasm between their performed self and their actual self grows until they can't remember which one is real anymore. Your morning ritual, the one you do when absolutely no one will ever know whether you did it or not, This is the truest measure of who you are, not your resume, not your social media presence, not your reputation. This private commitment, kept or broken, tells the real story. When you choose discipline in the unwatched moment, something profound occurs. You're not doing it for external validation. You're not collecting points or building a personal brand. You're simply becoming someone whose word means something, even when that word is only given to yourself, especially when that word is only given to yourself. Do you understand how rare this is? How few people actually keep promises to themselves. They'll move mountains to avoid disappointing others, but they'll abandon their own commitments without a second thought, as if they matter less than strangers, as if their own dreams are negotiable. This is self-betrayal at its most insidious, and it starts in the morning. Every time you hit snooze after promising yourself you wouldn't, you're learning that your word is meaningless. Every time you scroll instead of creating, you're teaching yourself that your priorities don't actually matter. Every time you postpone the difficult thing, you're proving that you can't be trusted with your own life. And your subconscious is taking notes. It's learning that you're not serious, that you don't mean what you say, that when things get uncomfortable, you fold. Is it any wonder, then, that you don't trust yourself with bigger challenges, that you sabotage opportunities, that some part of you believes you don't deserve success? You've been training yourself in failure every morning, in surrender, in the art of self-abandonment. But it works the other way too. Every morning you honor your commitment, especially when it's hard, especially when no one will know. You're building something unshakable, self-trust, the bone-deep knowledge that you are someone who does what they say they'll do. This is the foundation of all confidence, not the loud, performative kind that crumbles under pressure. The quiet, steel core kind that carries you through when everything else falls apart. Mediocrity is not a punishment. It's a choice, a daily, deliberate choice, dressed up as inevitability. You look around and see everyone else drifting through their mornings in a fog of half-consciousness, and you think this is normal. This is just how life works. Everyone's tired. Everyone's overwhelmed. Everyone's waiting for the weekend, for retirement, for someday when things will finally be different. And so you join them, not because you want to, but because stepping out of that stream, swimming against that current, it marks you as different, strange, too intense, too much. Better to blend in, better to stay comfortable, better to save your energy for what exactly? For the life you'll start living once conditions are perfect, once you're ready, once the stars align. They won't, they never do. What I'm asking you to do with your mornings is nothing less than rebellion. A quiet revolution against the epidemic of sleepwalking that passes for existence. Every morning you choose awareness over autopilot, intention over impulse. You're declaring that you refuse to be ordinary, not because you think you're superior, but because you know you're capable of more, and settling for less would be a betrayal of the only life you're ever going to get. This terrifies people. Your commitment to your morning ritual will make others uncomfortable. They'll mock it, call it excessive, tell you to relax, to stop being so serious, to just live a little. What they mean is, stop reminding me of my own surrender. Stop showing me that change is possible, because then I have to confront why I'm not changing. You'll be tempted to listen, to ease up, to prove you're not one of those intense, obsessive types, to show that you're still normal, still relatable, still one of them. Don't, because here's what happens when you consistently show up for yourself each morning. You become dangerous, not to others, but to the status quo, to the comfortable lies society tells itself about what's possible. You become living proof that discipline isn't deprivation, it's liberation. That structure isn't restriction, it's freedom. And nothing threatens the empire of mediocrity quite like someone who's actually free. Your morning practice is a declaration of war against your own limitations, against the voice that says you can't, against the history that says this is just who you are, against the 1,000 tiny compromises that have accumulated into a life you barely recognize. Each dawn is an opportunity to stage a coup, to overthrow the tyrant of yesterday's choices and install a new regime, one where you're no longer ruled by impulse, by fear, by the path of least resistance. But understand this, revolutions are won in inches, not miles. You don't transform your entire life in a single morning. You transform a single morning, then another, until one day you look back and realize you're living in an entirely different country than where you started. The distance between who you are and who you could be is measured in mornings, in the accumulation of choices made when it would have been easier to choose differently, in the quiet victories that no one sees but that reshape everything. This is not about perfection. Some mornings you'll fail. You'll hit snooze. You'll reach for your phone. You'll skip the hard thing. And that's fine, as long as you understand that failure is a teacher, not a destination. The question isn't whether you'll stumble. It's whether you'll use that stumble as an excuse to stop running, or as information for how to run better tomorrow. So here we are, the end of the lesson, though truthfully, nothing ends here. Everything begins. You now possess knowledge that most people will spend their entire lives avoiding, not because they can't understand it, but because understanding it means they can no longer pretend they're powerless. They can no longer blame circumstances, genetics, history, or fate for the life they're living. And that responsibility, that weight of knowing you're the architect of your own existence, it's crushing. It's far easier to remain unconscious, to drift, to tell yourself that this is just how things are. But you're still here, still listening, which means some part of you, perhaps the part you've been ignoring for years, recognizes the truth in these words, knows that your mornings have been escaping like water through your fingers, and with them, your life. Tomorrow morning, you'll wake up. That's certain. What's uncertain is who will wake up. Will it be the same person who's been waking up for months, years, decades, going through the motions, surrendering to patterns that serve no one? Or will it be someone different, someone who's finally decided that enough is enough? The choice is devastatingly simple, terrifyingly simple, because you can't hide behind complexity or confusion. You either do it or you don't. You either honor your morning or you don't. You either become who you're capable of becoming or you don't. And before you start negotiating, before you tell yourself you'll start Monday or next month, or when things calm down, understand that you're doing exactly what I warned you about. You're postponing, you're buying time in a currency you don't actually have. You're betting on a tomorrow that's promised to no one. What if there is no better time than right now? What if all your waiting has simply been fear dressed up as wisdom? What if the only thing standing between you and the life you claim you want is this single decision to stop negotiating with your own potential? Your morning is the fulcrum upon which your entire life balances. Change it, and everything shifts. Ignore it, and nothing does. I cannot force your hand. I cannot make you care about your own existence more than you currently do. I can only show you the door. You're the one who has to walk through it. Every master of any craft, every person who's ever achieved anything meaningful, every soul who's looked back on their life with satisfaction rather than regret, they all understood this fundamental truth. How you do anything is how you do everything. And it all starts with how you begin your day. So, when you wake tomorrow, and you will wake tomorrow, assuming you're granted that gift, you'll face the oldest choice in human history. The choice between comfort and growth, between the familiar and the transformative, between staying who you've always been and becoming who you've always suspected you could be. No one will force you to choose correctly. No one will punish you for choosing poorly. The universe doesn't care, but you'll know. In that quiet space between your public face and your private truth, you'll know exactly what you chose and why. And that knowledge will either haunt you or liberate you. The potion is brewed. The ingredients are laid out before you. The instructions are clear. All that remains is for you to decide whether you're brave enough to drink it. Because transformation isn't comfortable. It never has been. But neither is staying the same while some buried part of you screams that there's more, that you're capable of more, that you were meant for more than this half-lived, half-conscious existence. Your morning awaits. It's been waiting your entire life. What will you finally do with it?